We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast, brought to you by our great friends at Alumni Hall. Make sure to check them out for all your 2025 Georgia football game day gear needs. And on today's show, I'm going to continue my Georgia football top 5 series by revealing my top 5 impact freshmen on Georgia's 2025 football team. But before we get there, guys, if you haven't already and you're a diehard Georgia fan, go ahead and subscribe to this channel, turn those notifications on. We have a ton more content to get you guys ready for the start of the 2025 season, and you don't want to miss any of it. So subscribe, hit that notifications button. If you enjoyed today's video, like the video, and let me know what you guys think. What did I get right? What did I get wrong in my list today? Who would be your top 5 impact freshmen on Georgia's team entering the 2025 season? But all right, guys, let's go ahead and dive into this. My top 5 impact freshmen on Georgia's 2025 football team. And when I do this exercise every single year, and I've done this, I think at least last 4 or 5 years running, when I do it, I really boil it down to 2 basic factors. Number 1, ability, and number 2, opportunity. You've got to be good enough, right? Do you have the ability as a young player, as a freshman? Are you good enough to step in and contribute for Georgia, make an impact in the SEC for a national championship contender right away? Do you have the ability? But sometimes the ability is not enough. Sometimes you have the ability, but the position you play might just be stacked in front of you. The depth chart doesn't really permit you to get on the field the way that your talent might suggest you would. So you've got to also have the opportunity. So when those 2 factors align, when you have the ability and the opportunity, that's when you've got an impact freshman candidate, guys. And if we usually have 1 or 2 every year. Last year, number 1 on my list was KJ Bolden. Thought that was pretty obvious, and that turned out to be the case. I'm a co-starter last year at safety. Why? Because number 1, he had the ability. Obviously, you knew that coming out of high school. And number 2, the opportunity was there, right? You know, obviously you have Malachi Starks, Dan Jackson's going to factor in, but there was going to be an open competition there for that second safety spot. And while he didn't start every game, KJ played almost like co-starter snaps there. So that was an obvious one. Peyton Woodring the year before was my number 1 guy because, I mean, I know it's not you don't think of a kicker as one of those guys that you're thinking is going to be an impact guy, but when you have a vacancy at kicker and you got to have one and you went out and signed one of the best kickers in the country, to me, that was kind of obvious that he was the most likely to be an impact freshman for Georgia in 2023. Malachi Starks before him, Brock Bowers back in 2021. Even before he was Brock Bowers, coming out of high school, I was telling everyone who would listen that year that this guy is going to be a difference maker. And, you know, you get some right, you get some wrong. And, yeah, Brock was that dude. So, you see them usually 1 or 2 every year, and all those guys I just laid out, what do they have? Again, they had the ability, number 1, and they had the opportunity based on the depth chart, which is what made compiling this list this year ahead of the 2025 season a little tougher for me because I don't think there is as obvious alignment between ability and opportunity this year as there were for a couple of guys each of the past several years. I think we have some incredibly talented guys that have the ability to come in and step in and help us right away, but is the opportunity there? That's the question I have with some of these guys. So it's tough. I'm sure I'll get some wrong and get some right in your eyes. I'm sure I'll leave some guys off, maybe have guys higher or lower on my list than where you think they should be. But yeah, just bear with me here. So tough, yeah, but I got a job to do. So let's go ahead and get the job done. We're going to start number 5 and work our way up to number 1. Coming in at number 5, I'm going to do number 4 and 5 together here because I had a tough time differentiating between these 2. But ultimately, again, you got a job to do. You got to land somewhere. So I landed with wide receiver Talon Taylor at number 5 and fellow freshman wide receiver CJ Wiley at number 4. Now, let me lay out why these guys are on the list first off and why I have Wiley slightly, ever so slightly ahead of Talon Taylor on this list. And the reason I was kind of torn between these 2, like who should be at 4, who should be at 5, was I feel like Taylor, if you go back and you watch his high school clips, and you go back, I was able to watch him at spring practice some this year, and you see him at G-Day, he is a more technically proficient wide receiver at this stage in his development than CJ Wiley is, in my opinion. You might not agree with that opinion, but that's my opinion. I think that he is more advanced at the nuances of playing wide receiver, running routes, all those kind of things, using leverage than CJ Wiley is. Not to say CJ Wiley is bad at any of those things. I just think Taylor, I think that's what made him a fringe 5-star coming out of high school. Like, he's a really good athlete, sure, but he was just a really technically advanced receiver, an exquisite route runner coming out of high school. But the reason I have him at number 5 and not number 4, even though I do think that, from a technician standpoint, he's probably more equipped to step in right away and be an impact guy for Georgia as a freshman. But I just don't think there are as many opportunities at the Z receiver spot as there are at the X receiver spot. And I do project Taylor to be much more of a Z receiver than an X. I think he's a Z slash maybe a little bit of a slot guy, whereas CJ Wiley is an X receiver all day long. We just don't have a ton of true X bodies on our roster. Yeah, Colby Young is one of those guys. I absolutely think Noah Thomas, the transfer from A&M, is an X body, but I think we want to get both those guys on the field at the same time. If you look at what we did at G-Day with the number one offense to open G-Day, it was Colby Young playing X, and um, you had Noah Thomas over at the Z position. So, like, those guys are interchangeable. I talked about that before when I broke down the wide receiver position ahead of fall camp. So I think those guys can both play X, they can both play Z. But outside of those two, who are the next like X bodies? There aren't really on the roster. I mean, last year we had Dylan Bell by necessity had to play X, and he's not really an X receiver. Like, he functioned fine, but he wasn't an alpha guy. That's not what he is. He's more of a Z and a slot guy, which is how we're going to use him this year, which is why I think he'll be even more effective for Georgia in 2025 because he's going to be playing more of a natural position for him. So I just think CJ as a true X receiver is going to have more opportunities than Taylor because there's fewer players ahead of him. We just don't have as many guys that are built like him as we do Taylor. Because if you look at the Z spot, okay, you got, I think it'll probably be Noah Thomas at Z, Noah Thomas or Colby Young, one of those two guys. Again, I think it's going to be Noah Thomas. You got Dylan Bell, who's going to get some reps at Z. I think that London Humphreys is going to definitely get some reps there. I mean, that guy, I don't know if you guys have seen some of the numbers that are coming out of Georgia's like our pro day we do before fall camp every year, kind of get the guys used to doing what they're going to do at the NFL combine or UGA combine day, I guess is really what it is. And yeah, London Humphreys put up some ridiculous numbers running in the low 4.4s, which is not surprising because that's kind of what he was coming out of Vanderbilt. He's a really fast guy with good size. I mean, like, guys around 6'2", 200 plus pounds, really good athlete, good broad jump numbers. So he's going to play there as well. So that's three guys I think you're contending with right away at the Z spot. And could Taylor work his way ahead of London Humphreys? Sure, he could. But London's going to year 3 at the college level. Taylor's going into year 1. London's been in our system for 2 years and did some good things for us last year when he was healthy. We all remember what he did against Clemson in the second half of that game. So, again, I just think that there's more opportunity, with that being one of my two big factors, for Wiley than there is for Taylor, although I do think both guys are really good players. I do think they're both going to make plays for Georgia this year. I just think Wiley's going to have opportunity to make more of them in 2025. So there's number 4 and 5 together. Then coming in at number 3 is one that I struggled with to a degree because when I'm projecting freshmen and what type of impact they're going to make in year 1, I think if you play on the lines of scrimmage, it's much tougher for you to make an impact year 1 than it is for skill guys. Why? Because even though you are a big, powerful dude, right? You come out of high school, you're the biggest guy on the block out there, you're just destroying people, whether it's offensive line or defensive line at the high school level, because you're just bigger and badder than everybody else. Well, when you get to the SEC, chances are in year 1, when you're playing against like 20, 21, 22-year-old guys across the line of scrimmage from you, you probably aren't the biggest, baddest guy out there anymore, right? So I just think it's tougher. I think a lot of times these guys get a year development, get a little bigger, add some weight, get some strength, just get used to playing in the trenches and in a league as physical as the SEC. So I'm usually very hesitant to project guys that play on the line of scrimmage, offensive line or defensive line, to make immediate impacts. But there are exceptions. We've seen exceptions at Georgia, right? So coming in number 3, I'm going to break my own rule here. I've got offensive lineman Juan Gaston, a mammoth of a human being at 6'7", 350 pounds, really rocketed up the recruiting rankings late last cycle. At the end of the cycle, was kind of like a fringe 5-star guy, one of the top offensive linemen in the country. Now, if you would have asked me back like in November, December? Like, is Juan Gaskin gonna make a big impact for Georgia in year one? I would have said probably not for the reasons I laid out for you. Also, because Juan, as talented as he is, I think he had some bad weight. When you watched him play at the high school level, you looked him out there on tape, there was some bad weight. He got away with it because, again, he's just bigger and badder than everybody he played against, and he's still athletic enough to be able to make it happen and be a big time player at the high school level to where you're gonna get recruited by big time SEC schools. But there was some bad weight. And I was concerned coming in as a freshman, if you have bad weight like that, are you going to be able to step in and help Jordan the offensive line? Like, we kind of need some help in the offensive line. Like, we have some guys I think are going to step up and be really good for Georgia on the offensive line this year, but we're also losing a ton of big time contributors from the past couple years on the offensive line. So it'd be nice to have a guy that can step in as a true freshman and be a guy that can at least push from the players that are already on campus. But with some of the I felt bad weight. I don't mean to slander the kid, but I think he had some bad weight. I think if you asked him, he probably would tell you the same thing. So I had my doubts there. But then we get to spring practice, and all of a sudden reports are coming out pretty quickly. Oh, this guy's got his body in shape. He's cut a lot of weight. He looks a lot trimmer. He's moving a lot better. I see him out there at practice, at the coaching clinic with my own two eyes. I see him out there at GA. I'm like, okay, yeah, I see it. Like, the body has. He's not a trim guy. He's still 6'7", 350, but he's moved around the weight. You don't see the bad weight the way that you did coming out of high school, like immediately coming out of high school. So I got to give the guy a lot of credit. He took the coaching, he took the nutrition, took the weight training, and has got his body in a position to where I think he can help Georgia in 2025 on the offensive line. So I think the ability is there. And the next question becomes, where's the opportunity? And I think that's also a part here where I struggle because there's not an obvious spot where it's a wide open position battle. You could say maybe right guard, but Daniel Calhoun is a guy that has a year on him and did some really good things at practice and pressing the coaches as a freshman. And was kind of slated to step in at right guard to replace Tate Riley, to kind of be that guy at right guard. But then Calhoun goes down with an injury about halfway through spring practice. And that opens up opportunities for some other players at right guard, guys like Michael Uini, who's coming his second year. He stepped up and got a lot of reps with the number one offense. And then you also have a guy like Juan Gaston who stepped up with playing some guard and getting reps with the number one offense, splitting reps there at times at the guard position, which I found interesting because coming out of high school, Juan Gaston was going to be a tackle, probably a right tackle. If he got his weight in order, maybe he could play left tackle at some point in his career, but his best chance early on would probably be at right tackle. And I always felt like Ernest Green, like if there was a spot that might be like really open for competition coming into the spring, coming into the 2025 season. I thought maybe it's right tackle because Ernest Green, I know he's a really highly rated guy coming out of high school. I know injury has certainly been part of the issue, a big part of the issue for him his first couple of years in Athens, but hasn't looked great. And last year was a tough year. Injury really, really hampered him. I don't want to put all of them like injuries. The guy was going out there doing what he could, man, and it wasn't enough. And he eventually had to be taken on the lineup because he just couldn't get the job done with the injury that he was dealing with. And he's not really a tackle in my opinion anyway. And so he's certainly not a left tackle, but then you're going to try to move him to right tackle, see if he kind of performs a little better there. But I felt there was maybe a tenuous hold at right tackle. And if a guy like Juan Gaston could come in right away and get his body in shape and step up, like maybe there's an opportunity at tackle. But then you have the injury at guard. And so that position, I don't want to say it opens up, but opportunities opened up there. So I do think that he is going to continue to get a long look at that position during fall camp. And it wouldn't surprise me. I would right now tell you, I don't think he's going to start to open the season. I would be very surprised if that happened, but it's not impossible. Because again, Calhoun was a guy that we kind of penciled in to be the guy at right guard, but it's not like he is a multi-year returning starter. Like, yeah, he's got a year on Gaston, a year on Michael Uini, but like, does he have like a full-on claim to that position when you go down with injury? Like, he was trying to lay claim to that position during the spring, but then he missed half the spring with an injury. So I do think that position might be a little bit more open. And if Gaston continues to progress the way that we saw him progress throughout the course of the spring, I think there's a real chance, even if he doesn't start, that he has an opportunity to work himself into a rotation of sorts at the guard position, which is not unprecedented with our offensive line guys. The past couple years, we've seen that, right? Dylan Fairchild, Micah Morris, really had like a three guard rotation the past couple years, and that could be the case again this year. Could Juan Gaston be that third guard that we rotate in with Micah Morris and Daniel Calhoun at right guard? Could we have a four guard rotation? Do we like Michael Innie and Juan Gaston? We rotate with guard positions? That's a possibility. And then again, there's also the possibility that that Green doesn't really translate at right tackle. It's not getting the job done. And maybe that competition opens up at some point in the season as well. So I do think there are opportunities for him to be an impact guy for Georgia at some point in 2025. I think he's that talented. I think the opportunity, it might not be a wide open opportunity, but I think the opportunity exists there, again, at least to be in some sort of rotation. So I got Juan Gaston coming in at number 3 and coming in at number 2. Again, if you would have asked me prior to spring practice, I would have done this list prior to spring practice, this guy probably would have been on the list, and I would have been wrong. That would have been a mistake because probably the breakout star for Georgia of all of spring practice, one of them at the very least, was running back Bo Walker, freshman running back Bo Walker, 5'9", 210, not the biggest guy in the world coming out of high school. If you go back and watch the tape, like I kept saying coming out of the 2025 class, like I know this guy's not highly rated, but like he can play. It's kind of like a lesser degree of Jay Lamar. Like Jay Lamar, I feel right now as a guy who's committed to Georgia as a running back. I know he's highly rated. He's a 4-star guy, a top like 150 prospect. But I'm looking at this guy. I'm like, how is this guy not inside the top 100? Like, how is he not like close to 5-star status? Like, what are you looking for right now? I don't really know. So I felt that way about Bo Walker to a degree, but I didn't think Bo at any point in high school should be like a 5-star guy. But if you watch the tape, you just see a guy who knows how to play football. He just gets the job done. Not the fastest guy in the world. Like he is not a big time home run threat, but he does all the other things that running backs need to do really, really well. It's got great short area quickness, really good quickness in a phone booth, can make you miss in the hole, can make you miss in space, really strong contact balance, runs with good power, runs with good leverage, good pad level, has really good vision. So all those things outside of like elite home run speed, the guy checks those boxes. And like right away, at the start of spring practice, this guy started to build some buzz around his name. And that never really abated. It never really let down. And I was kind of like skeptical is not the right word, but I wanted to see it with my own 2 eyes. So I got a chance to get out there at practice. And yeah, sure enough, I see it myself. Like, okay, I get it. I see it. I see it. Bo Walker, this guy's legit. And I was convinced from the first time I saw him at practice this spring, it's like, this guy's going to play for Georgia this year. And I still feel that way. Did some good things, especially in the second half of G-Day. Now, the question here for Bo Walker is where do you fall on the depth chart, right? Nate Frazier is going to be Georgia's number 1 running back coming this season. I feel very confident saying that. And then we go out and get the leading rusher from Illinois in the spring transfer window in Josh McCray. So right now, when I'm looking at our running back depth chart, I'll break down this position a little bit more in depth in a couple of weeks. You got Nate Frazier at 1. I think probably McCray. And then you got Rod Robinson, who I'm sure some of you guys have seen the videos making their way out there on social media, doing a lot of training on his own this offseason, and looking good. But there's still a lot of questions around Rod right now. I believe in Rod when he's healthy, but Rod's coming off successive injuries, guys. Like a number of injuries have held him back over the course of the last year and a half or so. So I don't know what to expect from Rod. Like, sure, in the 5-second clips we see, he looks good. But what does he look like with pads on when you're going out there and running against real defenses? I think that's still a question. So there's a chance that Rod could be the number 3 back. There's a chance Rod could be the number 2 back. Like, that's not out of the question. So where does Bo fit into there? So again, I don't think he's going to be the top 2, but can he be that number 3 back? If he's the number 3 back for Georgia coming into 2025 season, he's going to get carries, and I think he's going to make an impact for Georgia. Again, I don't think at any point he's going to be the leading rusher for Georgia, but it's also a position we've seen the past couple years where injuries happen, right? I mean, Trevor Etienne missed basically half the season last year. I know it's a combination of suspension in game 1 and some injuries later in the year. You go back to the start of 2023, guys, like we could barely field a running back unit. Kendall Milton was not healthy really at any point in 2023, maybe more so at the end of the year, but not at the beginning of the year. But the dude started for us game 1 out of necessity because we had no one else. He was the closest guy we had to being ready. And then Dejan Edwards gets healthy a couple games later. But it's really those 2 guys. So injuries have been an issue for us at that running back position for a couple of years. And that, like, I don't want that to be the case this year. I don't want to wish that into existence, knock on wood, but we've seen it. Like, we've seen the past couple years. And if that happens again this year, I think Bo Walker would be positioned to be a guy to step up and get a lot of carries for Georgia if somebody was unfortunately happened to go down with some sort of injury there. So at the very least, I do think he's going to get some carries here and there to open the season. And if he performs at a high level, I think those carries will increase as the year goes on. Again, I think the big competition for him right now is Roderick Robinson. Can he put himself ahead of Rod coming out of fall camp. If that's the case, then I do think he could be a guy that could put up 300 to 400 plus yards rushing for Georgia this year. If you go back to the 2023 season, Kendall Milton was our number 3 rusher in 23. The guy had 500 plus yards rushing. So I think that could be in store for Bo Walker this year, and that would be a great freshman year. There's certainly be an impact player for Georgia as a freshman. And then number one, probably no surprise to anybody here on this list. And I feel like this is kind of a cop-out. I didn't want this to be my number one guy because he was the number one guy in our recruiting class. He was a top 10 prospect nationally, the number one defensive tackle in the country. But again, if I'm looking at ability and opportunity, I think Elijah Griffin has to be number one on my list of Georgia's top 5 impact freshmen entering the 2025 season. You don't need me to tell you how good the guy is. If you've watched his tape coming out of high school, you know. You've seen it yourself. He's the number one defensive tackle in the country in this 2025 class for a reason. The guy is legit. There's shades of Jalen Carter, a little bit different, but I say there's shades there because, like Carter, he's really explosive off the ball, has elite first step quickness, has twitch in his game at the 3-tech defensive tackle position, and also is really powerful at the point of attack. And I go back to my statements I made there with Juan Gaston. Again, I'm always hesitant with guys that play on the lines of scrimmage as freshmen. Like, are they really going to be impact guys? I think it's harder to do that than it is other positions. But I also think Elijah Griffin is one of those guys that might very well be an exception because of things I laid out, because he has the requisite quickness. He has the requisite power at the point of attack. I think this guy is going to be I don't want to say an elite guy for Georgia right away, but also I don't think that's crazy to say he might have the chance to be that. Now, opportunity is interesting here with Elijah Griffin. Do I think he's going to start for Georgia in 2025? No, in no way, shape, or form do I think that's going to happen. But you also have to remember, guys, on the defensive line, that's a position that we rotate at very liberally. Now, we do have some guys that I think right now are clearly ahead of him. Christian Miller, when healthy, and he will be healthy to open the season as long as nothing crazy happens in fall camp, knock on wood. As long as Christian Miller's healthy, I think Christian Miller's going to be an absolute monster for Georgia this year, and he's going to be ahead of Elijah Griffin this year in 2025. I absolutely love Xavier McLeod, right? I talked about him as one of my top sleepers for Georgia in this 2025 on this 2025 team. I think he can play 0-tech. I think he can play 3-tech. I think right now he is going to be ahead of Elijah Griffin. You have Jordan Hall, who's coming off 2 stress fractures, one in each leg from last year. I think he's going to be ahead of Elijah Griffin. I think Jordan's going to play more of the 0-tech for us. I think Jordan can absolutely play 3-tech. I think he has that positional versatility. So there are clearly some players ahead of Elijah Griffin on the depth chart at defensive tackle right now. But again, that is a position where we rotate heavily. Ideally, if you go back the past couple years, we ideally want to have our guys at defensive tackle play it's somewhere between like 20 to 30-ish% of our defensive snaps in a single game. That's the sweet spot, right? Now, early last year, we had so many injuries on the defensive line that you had guys like Nas Stackhouse and Christian Miller playing like in some games 70+% of our defensive snaps. And you could see late in those games, they were worn down, right? That's not an ideal situation. But I think that with a guy like Elijah Griffin and you get Jordan Hall back and Xavier McLeod in year 2 at Georgia, year 3 at the college level, I think we have more options at defensive tackle, and I do think that we're going to be able to get back into a rotation where guys are playing somewhere between 20 and 30% of their defensive snaps. And I don't know if Griffin will be there right away. Is he going to play 20 to 30% of our snaps week 1 against Marshall? I don't know. Or maybe week 3 against Tennessee in our first SEC contest. I don't know. Maybe it's more like 10 to 15% early on. But something tells me, guys, the more he gets his feet wet with the insane athletic ability this guy has, the talent that he has, I think he's going to get better and better and better each and every week. And I think that his reps are going to continue to increase week after week because I think the guy's going to produce. I think that highly of him. I think he will produce. And if he does produce the way I think he does, I could absolutely see a situation where late in the year, this guy is playing 20 to 30% of Georgia snaps on that defensive line. So I got Elijah Griffin coming in at number 1. No surprise there on my list of Georgia's top 5 impact freshmen entering the 2025 season. So there you go, guys. That's my list. Again, I know, I'm sure you agree with some. You probably disagree with some. So let me know what your list would be. Who would be in your top 5? Is Elijah Griffin the obvious number 1? Is there somebody else that you think could be in contention there? Who did I leave off? Let me know, guys. Love to hear from each and every one of you out there. But thank you guys so much for checking out today's episode. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Again, if you're a diehard Georgia fan and this is the kind of content that you are looking for in your Georgia football coverage, make sure to subscribe, Turn those notifications on, like the video, comment, all that. It's a huge help, guys. We've been running the podcast on the audio side for going on 11 seasons now. Just getting the YouTube channel started over the last 6-7 months or so. So it's grown a lot. We want to keep this thing going. I appreciate all of your help in that regard. But thanks, guys. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.